What's up, Sales RXers? Look, with outbound conversion rate benchmarks being as low as 3%, it's no secret that it's really tough right now for a lot of sellers. And if you're an individual contributor or a senior leader in marketing, RevOps, sales, any role that has a revenue related metric that you have to attain, it's time to find a better pipeline channel. So, what's better than selling to someone who doesn't know you or your product? Selling to someone who does. This is where Champify comes in. Champify monitors key contacts at accounts like champions, post-sale sponsors, admins, heavy users, and they enrich that data to detect job changes, determine relevancy for outreach, and then assigns and alerts reps with those newly assigned leads. So if you haven't tried out Champify yet, you need to give it a shot. Stop spinning your wheels with outbound heavy sales motions and start selling to people you've already sold to. You can click the link below in the show description for an extended proof of concept and free data test from the team at Champify. What you'll do is click podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Let them know that the Sales RX podcast sent you so they know who to give the VIP treatment to. Now let's jump into today's episode. So Eric, it's great to have you here. We are having some conversation before the podcast really about how CIENCE has this concept of inbound led outbound and helping better prioritize the right people to target on outbound by leveraging your inbound motion. So I really want to dive into this topic a little bit more. I want to learn a little bit about kind of the concept behind it, what it is, a little bit of the why it's important and why we should be thinking about this. Whether I'm a SDR manager looking to improve my process or just an SDR looking to increase my performance. And then hopefully we can dive into at least one tactical and practical tip from you on how somebody can accomplish this. So fill me in. What is this concept of inbound led outbound? That's really catchy. I like it.
Yeah. TM, right? I've got to go and trademark that. I think we can all agree that most of the outbound that anyone receives throughout their busy day, if they're on the buy side, is what I like to call list-led outbound. And, it's basically you kind of go, whether it's an account-based or, a contact-led list that's generated that you then go work in sequences or cadences. And then, you basically generate appointments off of all those folks going forward. So that's kind of like the first and most obvious and most prevalent form of outbound. From there, there's gradations above, and I would argue more in tune with kind of a reality of the buyer. And oftentimes those are what we would call intent-led outbound, right? So using intent tools to delineate who's in market and, kind of try to figure out or triangulate on, people that might have a buying intent around your topics or interest levels in your product or services category. Other kind of forms of intent-led outbound would be trigger event selling. So if some event happened that led to me wanting to reach out to you as a very appropriate kind of prospecting motion, those tend to also perform better than list-led outbound. But I would argue that the most important kind of form of outbound that you can prioritize in any go-to-market motion is actually a combination of the two. So what I would call inbound led outbound. And what this would functionally mean is having the tools and the tooling, having the mindset, and having the prioritization to essentially be able to pattern match those people that are already visiting your website or web properties, identify who those people are, and then run a prospecting motion back out to any one of them that matched your ICP criteria. And obviously, there's some I guess functions of doing this well or doing it better than average, which would involve time or timing, right? Because we could all agree that decay and delay is probably not your best friend when running this type of motion.
Yeah.
It also involves essentially the tooling, like I was mentioning earlier, to figure out who is, kind of like already in your kind of vortex. If I were to channel this over to an e-commerce example, I would say, who's already in your store? You know what I mean? Like who's already checking you out, kicking your tires, and ultimately getting familiar with your brand for whatever reason, largely because maybe there's intent there, but maybe there's a search for a need. And if all the buying journey statistics that we've learned over the last decade plus are true, we know that most buyers don't self-identify on the first visit to any website that they visit. In fact, most marketers, brethren, my brethren, if you will, my CMO peers out there in the world know that, we have an unfortunate, dirty little secret that goes on virtually all of our websites every single day. And that is that 97 to 98 to maybe even 99% of the people that visit that website go away without doing a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're silent. They're anonymous. They're just on your site as traffic. They get counted by all your analytics tools and everything that you do. But for the most part, they're Kaiser Soze. They're ghosts that
Mm-hmm.
vanish into the wind, never to be seen or heard from again. Even when we spend a lot of time, money, and effort to bring them there to the website in the first place. And frankly, most marketers that I know of spend a lot of money to retarget them and throw ads against that visit, and to try to bring them back over and over again to the website, and then let the website do all the heavy lifting. I would argue that probably the highest and best case and best use of outbound is to go after those individuals that meet your ICP. So they would be an ideal customer profile, verified leads, if you will, that have already kind of expressed that first motion or notion of visiting you. And so this to me is already like 3 steps up the rung of prioritization. And the reason why it's so important to us here at CIENCE is because, frankly, we've had a lot of really good success at figuring out who are these people that are potentially expressing buying intent for our particular, products and services, but didn't actually consummate the deal, fill out a form, and otherwise get routed to our inbound SDRs on that visit whenever they happen to show up.
Yeah, that's a unique concept. I like it. And I guess what I'd be interested to know, like if you were consulting me for Sales Doctor here and trying to help me create this motion. So obviously there's some tools you need to be able to track that stuff. It gets a little technical at that point. So obviously something
sure.
we're not going to, this is not a RevOps podcast, so we won't dive into that. We'll spare everybody that for now.
Yeah.
This is a RevOps or Marketing Ops podcast. We'll save that for another time. But if I start collecting that information, now, how do I mean, obviously it's a little different if someone came to my site, browsed around, clicked on through a couple tabs, looked at a couple different things, than if someone submitted for a demo or submitted an interest for pricing or downloaded
Correct.
3 case studies in a row or 2 case studies or whatever your trigger is for content,
Yeah.
content gated leads. How do I what is the type of messaging that an SDR is going to use at that point so they're not too creepy, right? Because it's almost like, well, how do you even know it was me? Like I can see where that could be a bit of a pitfall. So I'm gonna put you on the spot and kind of see what's your recommendation on that approach and messaging and cadence for the SDRs that are doing outreach to these leads that really didn't put their information anywhere officially on the site to be contacted.
Yeah, I think it's really to hit the value props that you could ascertain would be present on the pages that were visited, and ultimately take and let serendipity kind of perform the function that it does, which is to say that if I was on a brand's website and I'm getting a message from that brand in a direct response, whether it's cold call, cold email, LinkedIn outreach, what have you, ultimately, I don't need to even spell it out. I don't even need to cross that creepiness line. I just need the timing of wanting to take the conversation direct and offering the ability to do so. I actually think this is the key to what makes it all a much better outbound motion, is that we don't need to be as pedantic or specific on messaging that works as we do around when we're doing everything cold start. When we're hitting cold start, the messaging has a lot more attached to it because it's got to clear a lot more hurdles mentally, and kind of like you're competing with everything else that's in that inbox that day.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trading on with inbound led outbound is a much more familiar type of approach, and I almost think of it as right in between that kind of like true inbound and true outbound kind of motion. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, in our company, we actually let our inbound SDRs run the motion to even those that haven't filled out the forms, largely because we just want a conversation. We want to start that up with why it might be interesting to take a look at CIENCE right now, and some of the areas where, especially if we know, kind of like where you were visiting and that, folks from your company were visiting our website. We want to make it real easy to start up that conversation again. knowing full well that, frankly, your bias is what most people's bias is whenever they search the web. They don't leave a paper trail. They don't
Hmm.
leave crumbs. They don't raise their hand on every site that they visit. The stats are overwhelming in this regard. That's why I gave the example of the 98% rule earlier. At best, most industries, and you can get statistics on this from every leading source. My favorite are HubSpot, where they go industry by industry. And it's like, if you're above a 2% conversion rate on your website, rock and roll. You're in the best.
Hmm.
You're in best in class at what you're doing with letting your website actually convert your visitors. But for the other 98%, many of whom I would argue would exist in a hypothetical ICP, why wouldn't you spend the time to figure out how to get conversations started with those people that just behaved normally on your website?
Sounds like free money. I'd say it was always a thing as like a sales development leader when I went into an organization. They're like, we want to go outbound, right? Especially in like 2021 when outbound became the new hot thing. After we kind of, in the tech world recovered a little bit from COVID in late 2020 and back half of 2020, and everybody was doing well. And then, people were hiring burger flippers as first time SDRs, and then we were just seeing this massive boom. Everybody wanted to go outbound. And I'd go somewhere and I'd look at their system and I'm like, okay, you want to go start pulling a bunch of people to call. What about all these inbound leads that haven't been talked to for 6 months? That's free money. What about a list of people that haven't been contacted, were never contacted or converted on the inbound side 6 months or older? Like that's like total free money. So you're talking about like the same thing here. It's free money. They're already visiting your website. How do we get them to take action? And I love the idea of having SDRs do that outreach than just collecting that information and throwing it in a general marketing bot or something to reach out to people like, hey, you abandoned your cart type thing, because now you have a personalized touch. You have someone that's doing what you would do on the outbound with the personalization and the targeting, but doing it on someone who was merely like clicking through on your site and trying to check out a couple different things and just get some information, but maybe we're actually warmer than you thought. They were just a little afraid to press that get a demo button or speak to an account executive, right?
Well, and I think the other thing that's really important here, and so for anyone listening that's in a super competitive, what we would almost call a blood red ocean type of industry, hint, hint, that's most of them these days. And truth be told, when people are coming to your website, it's not like, oh, I need great summer reading. What's Grisham written lately?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I'm in a B2B, like specific product or service category that's inhabited by, dozens, if not hundreds of others. So people are doing their own homework and making their own value judgments and trying to put together their own research and synergize that information in their own head for the number one thing that I think most buyers want in every buying scenario that they're ever a part of, which is, I don't want to make a stupid decision. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I want to make a smart decision. So the best way to do that is to educate myself. Okay, if that's true, then I'm going to educate myself on a lot of vendor websites. I'm not going to raise my hand until I'm good and ready. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to, be in a sales cycle, so to speak, kind of building up my own evidence as I go. And all this is doing is basically saying, okay, of those people, as they come across kind of like your purview and they match your ICP, why wouldn't you prioritize those leads over all others, everything else equal?
Yeah.
I still have yet to find the reason why those wouldn't be better than just any names on a paper starting at A and ending at Z. You know what I mean? Like those are the Glengarry leads, if I'm going after them, that I want to spend my time with. And you said something earlier that was kind of interesting to me. You said, this is free money. And the big idea that I think, again, as a marketer, I would want to convey to others that are tied or wrapped into the marketing discipline or have marketing in their title or are part of that department. Every single visitor that comes to your website has a cost attached to them. Mm-hmm. You paid some form of money, time, or resources to get them there, whether you know it or not, whether it was a networking or a word of mouth conversation, whether it was the content that you SEO'd to be found in Google that got them to show up, whether it was an advertisement. There's always money expended to get anyone to your website. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm arguing is the best recovery for that investment is to attach an outbound motion on top of it, or frankly behind it or underneath it, for what you're already doing. All marketers worth their salt are measuring their KPIs and saying, well, how many unique visitors showed up to my website this month? Was it more than last month? Okay, great. I'm doing a good job. How many of the right people showed up? How many of them converted into contacts or into leads? Okay, great. Now I've got my key KPIs that I'm measuring against. Well, if you take a certain percentage, and again, I think it's the majority of the percentages as I've just envisioned or talked about, and you run an outbound motion to them, all of a sudden, I think you leverage that marketing investment. So not only is it free money, I think it's return on additional investment when you join these two concepts together that a lot of people just don't think about. But when they do rationally, for the CEOs out there listening to this, they're like, damn it, we better be leveraging that marketing budget that I just spent X, Y, and Z to get people to the website. That SEO firm or that marketing agency that I just hired, with the promise of redoing my website and getting more people there than had ever appeared before. Damn it, I need that leverage. And I want to force multiply all the good stuff that I've got going on when I'm winning and, raising traffic and getting more people interested in my brand. So on and so forth.
And I just feel like, I'm one of the few, I shouldn't say few, but you just see a lot of, a lot of hate towards marketing from salespeople sometimes. And I'm one of the few that actually understands like what the role entails and the work that's done. And it's always a team that I've loved working closely with. And I think that most people forget when you're doing outbound, you're essentially doing marketing. Because if you think of an AIDA funnel, right? Awareness, interest, desire, and action, you could apply that to the sales funnel itself, but it's really almost like a pre-funnel motion where the action part of that is when they're then an opportunity being talked to by an account executive. And when you're doing outbound, you are driving that awareness, creating some interest and desire to hopefully get them to take action. And the great part about it is it's really like the first part of that's already done if they're coming to your website. So now your outbound team is only focusing on the last three. It makes you able to put your time and energy into those three and do better there than having to focus on the whole thing from top to bottom, which is, it can be time consuming. I mean, that's why it's activity, right? On outbound, it's all about timing and activity. You might meet someone who's in a buying cycle. You might meet someone who's on the verge of being in a buying cycle. You might meet someone who's about to buy something right there and then, but then they're like, well, wait, maybe pump the brakes. This resonates with me. But to your point, like nobody's looking for some light summer reading by going to the website and looking at your products and services. Like I could give a shit about the mission statement. I'm not on your website to like just find something to read. I'm in some form or fashion interested or curious in what you do. And companies do not do a good job of building off that interest unless they do the work for us by clicking the button that puts us in the CRM. And I love this concept of the inbound led outbound and taking that motion to its fullest extent.
I actually think that this may be the number one gap between sales and marketing departments as they exist today, largely because I've yet to meet a sales department that owns the publicly facing website and the content that goes on it and the pages and their structure and what they say and so on and so forth. And I also have yet to meet, again, the marketing department that owns closed deals in non-transactional, non-PLG or freemium, where the website itself isn't actually closing business. So ultimately, if you think about it, the Venn diagram overlap between the two and the residue of, again, visitors to your website that literally didn't raise their hand. We don't know who they are. They're anonymous. They just went away silently. That's where that overlap exists to me to really take advantage of, leverage the investment. And maybe more importantly, and I love that you brought up Ada because I'm a huge fan, joined the fan club too, even though it's over 100 years old, created by a funny name guy named Eason and Elmo Lewis, who worked for National Cash Register back in the day. But I think the Ada model is so perfect. You absolutely nailed it on the head because awareness is everything in marketing. And it's where marketing lives, right? The marketing rule of 7, right? Like how many times does your brand need to be exposed to anyone for any kind of take rate, any kind of like recognition, any kind of like there or familiarity? Awareness is so huge. That's the hardest part. Moving from awareness to interest, desire to action actually can be on a much faster track than even getting that awareness in the first place, in my opinion. And so when they're all linked together in the motion or the go-to-market motions of your company, to me, that's just really smart marketing and sales.
Yeah, I mean, if they respond to your second email and want to take a meeting, or third time you cold call them, they pick up, you have a convo, you book a meeting. That's your IDA right there. Like, I mean, that's their
Bingo.
interest, and then their desire to do it, and then they take the action. So, to your point, yeah, you could accomplish that in one fell swoop. Where the awareness, you might spend 6 months trying to get them to even open an email, right? Um, it's there's
Well,
a
and you know what else is interesting is if you think about like what are the number one or the top tier buying scenarios that we really want to take advantage of. If you listen to Gartner or Forrester or any of the analyst groups, the buying scenarios you really want to take advantage of, what is it? Serious Decisions told us that 60% of all buy cycles happen before someone engages with a sales or a vendor.
mhm.
So by definition, if that's true or even directionally correct, don't you want to be in that first 50% of the buying, shaping? What is it that I need? What are the requirements? Imagine, if you will, like almost like an RFP that you got to write for yourself. That's kind of what inbound led outbound is really after at the end of the day. Because if you get to a person and you're demonstrating your company's kind of like value prop, your responsiveness, the fact that you were paying attention and you're now on the radar of the people that were looking at you, isn't that already kind of like that awareness leg up? And if I'm the first vendor into a competitive shootout, I get to shape the shootout. I get to shape the buy cycle, don't I?
Mhm.
That's where conversion rates go up, 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 up in a sales cycle. And I don't know a sales leader out there that doesn't worry a lot about winning more of the deals that they actually have in front of them that are SQLs versus less.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think of it this way: if they're on your site, they're on somebody else's site too. Like, I can't think of any scenario where really I would go to a company website. Like, a few months ago, I was shopping for a sales engagement platform for a team that I was working with, and it was like, okay, Apollo, Mixmax, Groove, Outreach, Sales Loft. I visited every site. Just, I visit Outreach site. Well, I also visit everybody else too. So if I'm looking at somebody's site, I'm probably looking at other people's sites as well. So you can no matter what situation. I mean, maybe they're a customer looking to renew. Maybe there's someone that is looking to buy. Maybe there's someone who's just interested in what you do, or they're curious. Like, I can't really think of any scenario where I would be on a company's website and I'm probably not looking up a competitor either, just to compare and contrast. Even, oh, this website looks great. I wonder what their competitor looks like, or what's a similar product. Go to G2 and write in competitor of this product, right? And looking up on G2 who is a competitor. I almost guarantee in any scenario I can think of, sure there's one that I'm not, but they're probably looking at someone else's site too. So, to your point, like, if you wait for them to come around before they're ready in that buying cycle, they might actually move on with someone else. And if you can get them before they're with other people, you're shaping that buying cycle, and you can use that education process in that sale to not only show them what is the best practice and what they should be thinking about, but like challenger sale. Here are 3 things that companies that like us will tell you you don't need. Here's why they're going to say that. Here's why you actually do. And then you can
Yep.
be the person who, when they go through that buying cycle, they go, oh yeah, this person's telling us this thing. And so did this other company. And you go, yeah, that's because of this. And they're like, yeah, that's right. He did tell us, she did tell us that was going to happen that way. Now you're the source of truth, and you're the genie in the bottle that they didn't know existed. Making all their wishes come true.
Well, and I think that again, I harken back to the word that I used earlier, which is serendipity, right? Like, why do we ever think that something is serendipitous? It's because we essentially we're matched in our own intent, in our own frame of reference by something else.
Mm-hmm.
And this is your opportunity to kind of like intercept exactly that and take advantage of all the goodwill that comes with paying attention. In fact, here's a nice side benefit from doing inbound led outbound at our company that we see all the time. We get to see when our customers are on our website or late stage deals that are going through our case studies section. And we get to give heads ups to all of our sales folks. Oh, did you know that Acme was just looking at X, Y, and Z? And the SDR there, even though it didn't land a meeting, like, you better believe that that kind of information is invaluable
Mm-hmm.
to the sales cycle or the sales motion of being able to close deals, bring them across the line, and understand the activity or the buying activity that's going on, to the extent that you can pay attention to those things. So ultimately, I still have yet to find a lot of flies in the ointment of why companies shouldn't be practicing inbound led outbound. Maybe I'll find one sooner or later, but I think that there's just like really concentrated goodness. And the main reason that I think most people don't do it or don't have a motion along these lines are marketing and sales bifurcation, lack of tooling, and
Mm-hmm.
lack of understanding that this is even, a thing and that I should be concentrating on it or otherwise leveraging it to my own best effect.
Yeah. I think tooling would be a big one. If I was running a sales team right now and you pitched this to me, I would probably say, well, I'm kind of worried about the tools and how to make it happen, because there is a lot that sounds like it's got to happen on the back end. But I love the concept. I'm sold. I'm sure there's some listeners that are sold. Eric, as we wrap up the episode, and I know we're a little bit over time, so maybe we split this into a two-parter, give the folks a little extra content. What is something that we haven't talked about that maybe a question I should have asked you or something we should have talked about regarding inbound led outbound?
Well, I think that one of the questions that we could invent are all around the how and all around the motion. You asked the question around messaging, but there's a ton of other ways to structure inbound led outbound. And one of the flies in the ointment is that it's a lot easier to just, go to your data subscription provider, or, we have our own data subscription product, but like spit out a list of 1,000 and again, work your way from A to Z on that list and do it every single day with sequences happening. And you check that box. Inbound led outbound is going to be more variable. The same number of people that showed up to my site yesterday and whether or not they matched my ICP is going to be different than what I see today. Mm-hmm. And that's just a natural kind of like what I like to call, and I'm a sports fan, so I use sports analogies, but what I like to call read and react, as opposed to, like I'm just going to follow the same play every single time. No, I'm actually going to read what, the defense is doing, and then I'm going to react accordingly because I want to move the ball up the field, so to speak. So that's a different motion. And it's filled with a bunch of trade-offs or what I would almost call activities that have to be shaped accordingly to have success. And we could talk a lot about, what those look like and how to do it kind of like right going forward. And then there's other things about the how that are deeper in the weeds, but could be very relevant topics for discussion in potentially a future episode. So if we want to dissect any of those, we can.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back later in the season to do a part 2 of the or what probably will be a part 3, because I'll probably split this into 2. So we'll do a part 3 and a part 4 towards the midway of the season. But I agree, right? The reason Patrick Mahomes is so good at playing quarterback is because all those no-look passes he does to his tight ends and receivers over the middle. If you just stare at the Z or X receiver the whole time, the safeties are going to know exactly where to go. They're going to intercept the ball. That's the my boy Kenny Pickett, a Steelers fan over here. Just watching him this last week in this great game he had. Not great statistically, but great because he won the game at the end, is just noticing how he's not staring at the guy he's going to throw to the entire time, which is a rookie mistake, right? It is, because you're like, okay, I'm going to throw to the tight end here. I'm just going to stare him down the whole time. And now linebackers cheat up and intercept the ball. It's about looking the safeties off, right? That's one of the concepts they teach quarterbacks. Look the safeties off, look in a different direction. Safety will cheat there. You throw it to the opposite end of the field. And that's how you move the ball. But I love that analogy because it's totally true.
Boy, nail meathead. I'm a Niners fan. And so we're on our third quarterback this year, Brock Purdy, but Brock on, because even though he's a rookie, he's learned this fine art of looking off like linebackers and safeties before he delivers the goods, which has led to a tremendous amount of success. So
yeah, George Kittle's having a great season. I would know, he was on my fantasy team. So it's, the back half of the year it's been night and day from the front half of the year, because he doesn't have the safeties cheating up on him or the linebackers playing over the middle. So
that's exactly right.
Eric, if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you or CIENCE, how do they get in touch with you? Where's the best place to connect?
Yeah, sure. So CIENCE is the easiest. It's science without the S. So it's an intentional misspelling, CIENCE.com. And you can find any of our kind of like inbound led outbound packages and all the services that we provide, as well as software along those lines. For me personally, I'm also an easy target because, as luck would have it, there's not that many Eric Quanstroms in the world. And so if you go to LinkedIn and you do even a remotely decent search on my last name, you're going to triangulate and bump into me. And I'm generally a pretty friendly fellow. So
they also, CIENCE also has the Enterprise Sales Development Podcast, which offers insights on ABM prospecting outbound in the world of sales development, which Eric is the host of and was kind enough to have me on a few months ago where we first initially met. So go and check out Eric's podcast as well. They have a lot of great guests on there. I just actually got done listening to the episode you had with Kayla. Kayla and I talk off and on, SDR managers, SDR
She's
leaders in the community. Yeah. So I was like really glad to see her on your episode. I was like, yeah, go Kayla. So, we met through Pavilion when I was at Pavilion and have kind of kept in contact. And so I just finished enjoying that episode. But I'm looking forward to catching up on some of the new episodes and whatnot. And really appreciate you taking the time, Eric. I know we had to do some rescheduling because both of us got ill this winter, but glad that we could make it happen. I know you're a little under the weather, so hopefully you'll be on the rebound. And thank you to all the Sales RXers and first-time listeners for tuning into today's episode. Tune in next week, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Chet. Appreciate it.